Good. Put that spit mask on. Let me finish the place. You spit on me again. You're
Get off my feet!
Difficult to watch. That is disturbing new video that 19 News just obtained. 19 investigator Mike Mason joining me now to talk about his exclusive story. And Mike, the officer involved here is an officer you have covered in the past. I understand he has been fired, and just today, charges have now been filed. Talk about this officer and how we got to this point.
Well, first of all, this particular incident happened on September 4th of last year. A woman was arrested on an outstanding warrant for aggravated menacing, and she admittedly was drunk and being belligerent towards the officers. I'll give her that. She was very honest when I talked to her on the phone about it. But she said she didn't deserve what happened to her afterwards. She said that this officer, Paul Stein, who we've done a story on before, was standing on her feet with his full weight as they were putting her in what's called a restraint chair to keep her under control. He wouldn't get off her feet. She said that it hurt tremendously because she was in only stocking feet. She was only wearing socks at the time. And when he didn't get off her feet, he hit her 5 times in the face, like you saw in that video. And he did it so quickly, it's hard to see. But he hit her 5 times. In the jawline, and she had some major bruises and lacerations as a result. And as a result of that, Paul Stein was charged with 1 count of assault. And what makes this significant is we've covered this officer in the past. Last April 30th it was, a man named Juan Wyckoff says he was driving on I-90 in Westlake when Sergeant Stein swiped his car and kept going. Now, Wyckoff at the time didn't know that Stein was an officer because he was just driving to work. He was driving his black Chevy Silverado to work. But Wyckoff, he was like, why didn't this guy stop after this accident? I'm going to follow him. So he starts following the officer and records it with his cell phone. They hit speeds up to 103 miles an hour on the highway.
And you have a whole story covering this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we should probably take a look at that story, get people up to speed on this.
Let's do that.
After 18 years with the Brooklyn Police Department, a sergeant with a 6-figure salary has now been terminated. Last fall, Brooklyn's mayor fired Sergeant Paul Stein for an incident that happened on September 4th. An internal investigation found he struck a woman 5 times in the face while her hands were cuffed behind her back. Stein's been in the news before. 19 Investigates broke the story about an incident that occurred on April 30th. Juan Wyckoff was driving an I-90, and he says Stein's truck hit his car, then sped off at more than 100 miles an hour.
He literally just tried to run me off the highway and kept going.
At the time, Wyckoff didn't know Stein was an off-duty cop on his way to work. Wyckoff grabbed his cell phone and he followed the truck and recorded it driving erratically. When the two arrived at the police station, Wyckoff followed Stein to the employee entrance. That's when surveillance video captured the officer aggressively pushing Wyckoff away and kicking his leg.
Or when it's assault on camera, not a crime. It makes no sense, because if I would have defended myself, I wouldn't have been able to talk to nobody.
You think you'd be behind bars?
If not worse.
Wyckoff wanted to press charges, but after police investigated, Stein only received a traffic citation and a written reprimand. That all changed this past September when police arrested a woman on an outstanding warrant for aggravated menacing. The report states she was intoxicated, acting uncooperative and belligerent, so officers cuffed her hands behind her back and decided to place her in a restraint chair. The report says Stein stepped on her feet to stop her from kicking. She said his boots were hurting her, so she told him to get off. When he didn't, the woman spat directly into his face. The report says Stein slapped her left cheek with an open hand, then he punched her left jaw 3 times. When another officer grabbed his right arm, Stein switched hands and struck her with his left fist. The chief wrote, "I believe this incident rises to the level of malfeasance, intentional conduct that is wrong or unlawful." He called the punches excessive and egregious. During Stein's pre-disciplinary hearing, he prepared a statement saying, "My objective was not to harm the subject, but to stop her from spitting at me again." He said, "I believe that the force I used was reasonable." Stein claimed the strikes were not delivered with a high degree of force and the suspect wasn't harmed. But reports show the woman did have lacerations to her lip and bruising to her jawline. Officers took photos to document her injuries, but we can't show you who she is since she's now considered an assault victim. At the end of his statement, Stein jotted down these handwritten notes. They read, "Undergoing counseling, on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and under pressure since the traffic incident." Stein was terminated on September 17th. Stein was one of 3 officers at the department in charge of reviewing use of force incidents. We reached out to him for his side of the story, but we haven't heard back. The city has turned this over to a special prosecutor to review for possible charges. At this point, he hasn't filed any, but we'll of course keep you posted if he does. Mike Mason, 19 News.
All right, now fast forward to today. We know that charges have now been filed, and that is the video, the body cam video from what we have today from that incident with that woman back in September. And it is incredibly disturbing to watch, Mike.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they assigned a special prosecutor to look into this. They thought that this was egregious. He agreed, and he filed charges against Paul Stein yesterday in Parma Court.
And so taking a look at this video, walk us through exactly what we're seeing. I know it was notated in some of those documents that you showed us in your previous reporting, but that was before we actually saw this video. So now that we see this video, kind of walk us through exactly what we're seeing here.
There you see Sergeant Stein pinning her shoulders to the restraint chair, then he lashes out, striking her 5 times in the face, 4 times with his right fist, 1 time with his left. Then he goes back to pinning her shoulders against the chair, and they put what they call a spit hood over her face because she spit in his face after demanding that he get off her feet several times, which he didn't do. And it's hard to see right now, but we do have video we'll show you in a little bit here of him standing on top of her stocking feet. He has boots on, of course, and she's not wearing any shoes. So what makes it extremely painful is that in this restraint chair, she has these metal foot pedals, and her feet are on top of those pedals. So when he stands on top of her feet, he's pressing down against the edges.
And she was just wearing socks. She didn't have shoes on. Okay.
So you can imagine, and you'll see in the video in our story, it looks painful. You know?
I believe we have that video. If we can take a look at that now, you can see more like Mike's talking about.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. See, so he's probably a 200, maybe even more officer, 200-pound officer, standing full weight on her feet on those metal pedals as they're strapping her ankles to this restraint chair. They're also strapping her wrist, and that's to keep her under control. I mean, there's no doubt that she was drunk, acting belligerent, but she was being verbal. It's not that she was doing anything physical. She was just, cursing towards the officers. And right there, they're strapping her ankle in. He remains standing on her feet for 3.5 minutes. And only once her feet, her ankles, and her wrist are completely strapped in does he get off. But you can imagine how painful that would be to have such a big guy standing on your feet when you're not wearing shoes.
Was she expressing that she was in pain to the officer?
She was saying that it hurts, get off my feet, get off my feet. Of course, she was cursing also. We have to bleep that out. But, when I talked to her on the phone, she's like, it wasn't my brightest moment, I'll admit that. But did I really deserve to be punched like that?
And so what happens next? I believe we have a different angle where you can see more of, her being punched by that officer.
Yeah.
And this is slow motion, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to slow this down so you can see it because it happened so fast. There with an open hand, he's slapping her for the first time, and then he closes his fist, delivers 1, 2, and you're going to see a third punch to her left jaw. How painful is that? You can see that he's putting his weight into the punches, too. And at this point, another officer puts up his hand to stop him, and so he switches hands, and he hits her one more time in the face with his left fist. So the officers, you can see in their faces, they're like, what the heck is going on? They knew that this was something that wasn't supposed to be happening.
So walk me through, how did we get to that moment when the woman is sitting in the chair. Take me through the moments that led up to that moment.
Well, first of all, she was arrested by Parma police, and they realized that she had an outstanding warrant for aggravated menacing. So they brought her to the Brooklyn Police Department. They had already told them that she was being belligerent. So they had 6 officers hanging out in case, they needed help getting her into this restraint chair. And they walk her up to the, this is the Sally Port outside. They want to walk her inside the station so they can put her in a holding cell. And this right now is just getting her out of the car. That is the restraint chair that they already have waiting for her because they called ahead saying that she was being belligerent and that they would probably need it. She sees that. She knows what they're going to do. So she doesn't really want to cooperate at this point. Regardless, they tell her that she has a chance to go inside into the holding cell without having to be put into the chair if she just cooperates. They give her one last chance. She doesn't want to cooperate. She basically plops herself down on the concrete floor and refuses to move, and that's when they physically have to put her into the restraint chair. So she wasn't, necessarily complying with the officer's directives here. I'm not saying that she's an innocent woman by any means, but the fact of the matter is she got hit, 5 times for something that didn't necessarily deserve any hits at all.
Was she hurt?
Yeah, she had bruising and lacerations to her face. Of course, we can't see how extensive those were because since she is considered a victim now, they can't show us her face. But I talked to her, and she's like, I was drunk, and when I woke up, I was beaten up. And I was like, what the heck happened? She didn't even remember exactly what had happened, but she knew that she was injured and that it had been documented by police because they showed her the photos.
And now fast forward again to today, charges have been filed.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that letter. I saw that letter from the police chief, I believe that it was. So what is happening now? What charges have been filed? What comes next?
Well, right now, Paul Stein is facing one charge of assault. It's a misdemeanor 1, first-degree misdemeanor, which is the highest degree misdemeanor you can have. He is scheduled to be arraigned next Thursday. So we'll see what happens there. But I'll tell you, having covered this in the past, these types of stories, I do a lot of police officer stories. I do a lot of reports about police officers on the wrong side of the law. And I'll tell you, probably in this case, since he doesn't have a history of doing this in the past, he'll get a slap on the wrist and he won't, of course, get any jail time. But it certainly will be a career ender for him.
Have you spoken with Officer Stein? Have you been able to reach out to him to get his side of the story as far as what happened here?
I tried to reach him and his attorney. At the beginning, when we first covered this story, I believe he replied to one of my emails and he made it very clear he didn't want to cooperate.
Okay, so he is not part of this story. The woman, is she suing?
She actually hired an attorney yesterday. Yeah, so she does plan on filing a lawsuit. And the interesting thing about that is she hired the same attorney who's representing Juan Wyckoff, who you just saw in the report that we profiled in our story last year. So this particular attorney has 2 cases now of people who are alleging that Paul Stein assaulted them. And in the first case, there were no charges. As you saw, Sergeant Stein received a written reprimand and a traffic citation. Even that written reprimand that he received was for the traffic violation and not for the assault that he was being accused of back then.
All right, and your story airs tonight, correct, Mike?
Yes, it does, at 6 o'clock.